I'm concerned if anything is like heavy-handed, or if something seems like it's coming out of the blue, because that's the big thing as a writer. You don't have perspective on how shoehorned something sounds until you have someone else that is reading it, and from their perspective they're like, where did this come from? Because like, you as the writer, you know everything that's going on there, and sometimes you have like presumptions that go on in your mind where it makes sense, but you haven't told the reader. When I was professionally editing especially, I'd see that a lot, where it is like a plot hole in a certain way, but it can be on like a micro scale of, there's a conversation hole where this person is talking like they might talk like casually about having interstellar warp uh, wormholes. Let's say they have interstellar portals that they can open up, and they just like casually mention that in a conversation. It's like, and like the other person understands. Is there something that we're missing, where there's some scene where they're using one of these, or they're like showing what the heck's going on? Or what was one, I was editing something recently where they're talking about like an evil king that keeps these like slaves for entertainment, for cruel entertainment. What do you mean are they doing like gladiator fights to the death with sticks? I didn't have like a good image for that. Of like, things kept very vague with, oh, this king is really horrific, and the big horrific thing that he does is slavery, and torturing slaves, implied torturing. They never use the word torture. Implied torturing slaves for fun, but there's like nothing to like hammer the nail in the coffin of, this guy is evil. Which that's something where I would do these kind of like short, I would say cut scenes, but that's not the right word in writing a novel. It's like a short chapter thing. Like I have a couple of chapters that are like 500 words long. It's a few paragraphs. It's not super long, where they are these like cutscene things where I would just, instead of telling this king is evil because he tortures slaves, I just do a cutscene of the king pitting two people against each other. You are twin brothers, but this town isn't big enough for the two of you, and each of you has a squirrel that you must grab by the tail and beat the other to death with, or something absurd like that, to show that this king that's running these gladiatorial fights is crazy. So that's a thing of showing, not telling. I mean, everything is being told in a story, and especially if things are dialogue driven, then you're talking about things that happened. Like, I might mention that there have been 2 wars for independence, and both of them failed before, but the current war that's taking place in the book is the 3rd war for independence that they're doing. Hey, Independence Day, fireworks and all that, ha ha ha. That their 3rd war for independence is what is taking place in the book. So I'm showing that, but they're going to make references to like failed ideologies, failed coups, failed military tactics from the previous lost revolutions. So I can't show the entirety of like all the context of what happened in those 2 previous wars. I guess it would kind of be like America doing a revolution against the monarchy, but it's, if it let's have the French Revolution, but not so inhumane. But it gets quashed a couple times. It's hard to see. It's hard to tell details about things like that, and then you'd want to go into explain. Well, then how does this work, or how does that work? Then why is it like the French Revolution? Why is that thing? It's like, yeah, that's just a vague thing that's in my head for like, oh yeah, the previous 2 revolutions were kind of like French Revolution of trying to overthrow a corrupt elite, and it failed twice in 2 different ways. How did it fail? I don't know the details for that. That's not really relevant to the story. The thing that's relevant is these people that are fighting are very experienced, and they have gone through a lot of hardships, and they're not naive. They really want to uproot this system that has been causing a lot of suffering, and a lot of people have already died trying to fight it. You have to focus on what are the kinds of themes that you need to develop and build on, and how you can show that through like action happening. And that's another thing, is that things can genuinely be dialogue driven especially great works of literature, especially 19th century literature, a lot of it's very dialogue driven. You don't have big explosions and heists going on and all of that. Oh, with modern marketable fiction, you have to have things paced really well with lots of action happening. Yeah, so there is a push towards having fight scenes occur. But there's a big thing about having fight scenes for its own sake, and like having shootouts or whatever for its own sake is stupid if there are no stakes. An easy way to show instead of tell is to have actual actions going on. And there's this dangerous thing where when you are having character dialogue going on, then you are just telling and you're not showing. That's kind of deceptive, because especially if you're doing something that's psychological, and if you're doing it well, if you're not a try hard fake, which it's hard to understand. Well, am I adequate, or am I just an imposter? Or do I have imposter syndrome? How do you get over imposter syndrome? Well, you need to have validation from other people. So, there's a pattern that's going on here. How do you not feel worthless? Other people have to tell you you're not worthless. Otherwise, you're going to keep telling yourself you're worthless, because no one's telling you that you're worthwhile outside of yourself. Basics. I don't know why this is so hard for the world to understand, but regardless, so when you are having characters just talking to each other, especially when they're talking about something really meaningful, especially if they're talking about something that is like a psychological experience, you can have very meaningful conversations. More often than not, dialogue between characters is going to be more meaningful than having your character blow up a building.